Everyone, it's 2 o'clock and we're here sitting as the Committee of Adjustment. Hold public meetings to hear applications for both minor variance and consents. Sandra, if I could turn this next section over to you, please, for the explanation of the process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, this is Committee of Adjustment, and each application will be announced by yourself. The planning report will be given, a synopsis thereof will be given by myself. The planning report is available on the township website. Following my report, the floor will be open to the public. Please make yourself known to the Secretary Treasurer, and the order of speaking is as follows. Those persons in support of the application, those persons in opposition to the application, those persons seeking clarification, and the applicant will have an opportunity to respond as necessary. Please note that all persons wishing to speak to the application must address their comments and questions to the chair. And we advise that before speaking, you must clearly and slowly state your name and address so that the Secretary Treasurer can ensure the record is complete. Of course, you're invited up to the microphone to make sure everything can be heard. Members of the committee may make comments or ask questions as they deem necessary. And the committee may make a decision on the application this afternoon. Reasons for their decision and the impact of public input will be provided by the committee members. Those persons requesting a copy of the notice of decision must do so in writing to the Secretary Treasurer, or you may sign the file sheet in the lobby. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sandra. The next item on the docket is confirmation of the agenda. Would someone move that, please? Mark, seconder. Pat? All those in favor? Passed. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? There being none, we will note that. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, dated February 12th, 2019. Is there a mover and a seconder on that? Larry? Seconder? Sorry, Bill? Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. Business arising from the previous minutes. Anything wish to be brought forward?
I have nothing to discuss.
Thank you. New business. Minor variance. Application A0219. And I see we have some people present. I assume possibly the applicant. Sandra, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is by Mark Hubble and Brenda Lee Cole for 9691 Beaver Meadow Road East, Part Lot 3, Concession 6, being described as Part 4 on RP 39R 2899 under roll number 050-09784. Originally, the report that went to committee on Friday was recommending deferral because there were some things that needed to be addressed by the property owner. Over the weekend, he has addressed at least two of the three issues, and I'm expecting he will speak to them the third issue this afternoon. So on Monday, he requested that the public meeting go forward, and that's when I sent you an up-to-date report. It's the opinion of this department that the proposed reduced side setback is not in keeping with the zoning bylaw. The notice of public meeting was circulated on or before February 25, 2019, and the signs were posted on the property on February 21, 2019, in accordance with the Planning Act. This application is seeking relief from Section 93C2 to permit a reduced interior setback of 1.22 meters, where 3 meters is required for a detached accessory building. From Section 93C4 to permit an increased building height of 5.49 meters, where a maximum of 4.5 meters is permitted. And from Section 525.3 to permit an increased floor area to be 109.71% of the size of the house, where a maximum of 50% is permitted. The applicant's reasons for not complying with the bylaw: the lot is tree covered and limited to the area permitted to develop. Loft storage space would decrease footprint of the building, and additional storage area is required. The proposal would be in keeping with the provincial policy statement in the township official plan, as single detached dwellings and associated accessory buildings are permitted in this area of the Oak Ridges Moraine. The property is zoned Oak Ridges Moraine Environmental with underlying rural residential provisions. Again, a house and accessory buildings are permitted in the zone. It's the opinion of this department that the reduction in the side setback from the required 9.8 feet to 4 feet is not in keeping with the intent of the bylaw. It would be placing the structure further inside the significant woodlot on the land and the surrounding lands. The increased height would allow for a storage loft and would decrease the footprint of the building, but still affording usable space. Should the committee grant the variances requested for height and area, the permitted use of the building would have there'd be conditions on the variance, as my request, that the building be used only for personal storage. It won't be used for residential or commercial space, and plumbing shall not be supplied to the building. During the site inspection, I did note there was a small shed and a wood shelter on the property that were not on the original application form, but they have since been demolished by the applicant. There's also a sea container on the property, and I've given to understand that he's in the process of having that removed in short order. So why I was requesting deferral, I believe that deferral is not required any further. Agency comments, Northumberland County had no objection. Public Works had no objections. Conservation Authority raised concerns about putting the building inside the significant woodlot within the natural core area. The purpose of the core area is to maintain and restore ecological integrity. And they recommend that the garage is located outside the drip line of the woodland at a minimum or to the extent possible. In general, they have no objection to the approval of the application and say that no permits are going to be required from them. As always, committee must satisfy itself that the 4 tests of each variance are met prior to granting relief. Is the relief minor in nature? Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? And is it desirable for the appropriate development and use of the land? Should the committee grant the requested variances, it's recommended the following conditions be imposed. The seed containers shall be removed forthwith from the property, and I've actually reworded the decision page. Forthwith prior to issuance of any building permits, to make sure we've got something to make sure this happens. The permitted use of the subject detached accessory building shall be for the storage of personal vehicles and household items only. Use of the accessory building as an accessory residential space, commercial purposes, or other industrial type uses is strictly prohibited. That would be on the building permit that would be issued. Plumbing shall not be supplied to the detached accessory building, which is a standard practice in the township. And the proposed building location shall be moved so it's located outside of the drip line of the trees to the extent possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there members here in support of the application today? If you would please come to the mic and identify your name and your address for the recording minutes, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Anthony Dew, and I currently reside at address 9673 Beaver Meadow Road, which is exactly 2 properties to the west of the subject property.
Thank you. Other members here for support of the application?
Myself, Mark Howell, which is the homeowner.
So you are the applicant, obviously. Would you like to speak to the application or provide answers to questions as we move through this?
Absolutely, yeah. I have a question of just clarification as far as the drip line. I'm just unaware of that term. Is that something someone could clarify?
Absolutely. We'll let you deal directly with staff on that. It's probably the outer limit of the branches where the water would migrate off the tree limbs themselves.
I would defer that specifically to the Conservation Authority.
Very well. Very well.
Should that be part of the condition then?
It is.
does it say to the satisfaction of the GRCA or in consultation with the GRCA?
I can add that if committee wishes.
Very well, as we move forward, we'll establish that. Obviously, there doesn't appear to be anyone here present in opposition to the application. And obviously, there doesn't appear to be anyone present seeking clarification on the application. Sorry?
I was just wondering if Mr. Dew had something specific he wished to say, or was just here in support?
Mr. Dew, would you like to provide additional comment other than your support of the application?
I would just like to say that the applicant did make every effort to communicate to me and to my family what he was intending to do, both with this project as well as its location. And given that the 4 southern properties off Beaver Meadow share similar topography, the height elevation is almost irrelevant, as we sit approximately 4 to 5 meters below Beaver Meadow Road. Our properties sit down below the road, and as we are fairly large properties, and given that others along Beaver Meadow Road have also done large auxiliary buildings, I saw no issue with the project whatsoever on my behalf.
Thank you. I shall turn it open to committee members. Any questions from committee? Bill, please.
Not necessarily questions, just comment. The 3 requests, the height of the building, I believe we have in the past allowed several buildings of that particular height, so I think there's a precedence has been set there. The size of the building is a issue that we've been dealing with for quite some time, and we have allowed several buildings to exceed the square footage. So I think I'm willing to give on both of those. I am a little bit confused, however, about the reason for the building having to be so close to the property line. From the diagram, it doesn't seem to be any reason why it can't go that extra 5 or 6 feet. I guess it would be to the west.
Would you like to direct that to the applicant,
Yes,
Bill?
is it something to do with the photography?
Yeah, my
Topography?
reasoning was,
Please, if you would use the mic for recording purposes.
I try to situate the intended building so it would, try to situate it where I put it on the drawing because of the trees surrounding it. I knew it was going to be an issue with being the heritage land feature or woodland feature in the Oak Ridges Marine, and I knew they'd have an issue with taking down trees. And because my property has so many trees, and where I intend to put it, there's next to no grass. I wanted to, yes, limit the problem of, having to ask to take down trees, as well as limit the least amount of grassed area that I would lose out on by putting it elsewhere. Yeah, sorry, that's.
If looking on your map, the blue line is in fact the drip line that is being referred to?
I can't speak to that.
No,
It's probably more apt to just be a tree line.
okay. But it would seem to me that if the building did move a little from the property line, it would actually be in less trees, although then you're losing the grass area that you're talking about, but.
And I don't believe this to be the drip line, if that is the case.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, that is an illustration taken from a air photo.
Okay.
So I just.
So that's probably
traced-
just a tree line then.
I traced what I saw as a tree line
Okay.
from an air photo that's.
Okay, thank you.
Could be a couple of years old.
Okay.
Sandra, if I might, sorry, Bill, are you done?
Yes, I'm still not entirely satisfied with why the building has to be that close to the property line, though.
Sandra, and I'm going to follow that too with my thoughts. Sandra, if that's taken from an aerial photograph, has some reasonable degree of accuracy to it. And what it's really showing is, as we move further further to the west, we're into more open space than where the building's proposed right now. Would I be correct in that thought, Sandra, that the original 10-foot side yard would probably have the building more out in the open and on more grass than it would be on the tree limit?
That's what I would see from the illustration.
If I were to turn to the applicant, is that representative of what's there?
I would have to disagree. Yeah, the majority of the trees are to the west of me. And between, I had the surveyor put out two stakes so I could measure off those stakes if I were ever to build a building. And between those two stakes, you might be 10 feet to the west before the trees start, yeah, where they exist. There's just one tree that is on my side of the property, close to the garage, but other than that, the trees are quite a ways away. You are right, if I do bring the garage closer, it is that much further away from the trees.
So what I'm suggesting is
That drawing,
if
I wouldn't say is entirely accurate.
we were to move the proposed building somewhat closer to the house and the cleared land behind it, I'm not just sure what those units are there, we should be more in the open than we are in the trees.
Yes, you are right by saying that.
So actually then a 10-foot side yard would have less impact on the
Yes, you
trees
are right.
than a 4-foot side yard.
That's correct.
I guess I turn to you as somewhat of a discussion here. If the committee were to go back to the original setback, that is something that your project could still move forward with. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from committee? Pat, please.
I think I understand this, but I just wanted to double check through you to the applicant.
Please.
Your goal, though, is to try and keep more cleared land because you have limited
Because I have some
lawn area?
because of the trees elsewhere, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from committee members? I'm concerned about the terminology drip line. If we put that as a condition, that may exceed even the 10-foot side yard requirement, which, if the application for minor variance wasn't there, we wouldn't be concerned about the drip line, would we, Sandra?
I wouldn't be aware of it. It wouldn't be something to bring forward to the committee.
Well, I'm going to say, any further questions then from committee?
If I could just clarify through you, Chairman, Chip, and that is, I think what Sandra's saying is we wouldn't be aware of it because there'd be no trigger point for us to then take action on. That's not to say that the drip lines aren't relevant to GRCA as far as their review and their comment. So they're bringing that forward as a result of the trigger of this application, which is why it's before you as the discussion point.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree with that. Thank you very much.
Pat, I believe you had another question?
I think, same line, but I want just clarification on something else. If this application had never come forward the way it was, and the applicant had decided that he was going to meet the setbacks for the, it's not really a shed, for the accessory building, and then came for a building permit asking for it further west but slightly further back into the trees, would the building permit trigger GRCA to look into the property?
No. If the proposal complies with all aspects of the zoning bylaw, I do not believe that building would have contacted conservation.
So that's not part of the building permit process?
Because a detached accessory building, residential use, is permitted in this zone, in this portion of the marine.
Okay, thank you.
This is one of the times glad I'm not sitting down there, but you people have to make a motion here. Are we in a position to make a motion on this particular application? Pat,
Don't know
please.
that this is a motion, but I'm
Okay.
honestly wondering if the applicant wants to reconsider his application, if we should give him the opportunity to defer in case he wants to look into other options, because he may not want the minor variance for the shed.
Well, it is,
I mean, that's not our decision, that would be his decision.
it is an option to the applicant, yes.
But if we go ahead and just make a motion, then he doesn't have the option to say, oh, I want to defer.
That is correct.
I'm just throwing it out there, folks.
Any other comments?
Well, maybe we need to hear from the applicant. I mean, the way, and I'm only speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for anybody else on committee, but as I've said, we've set precedents before for building this height, and I'm perfectly willing to make that motion. And the size of the building, considering that you have a large piece of property, I have no problem with the size of the building either. I am, however, not comfortable with the fact that it needs to be that close to your property line. So if I'm going to be involved in a motion, it's going to be that we accept the first two variances, but not the third one. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, just-
It used to be an up there, I'm sorry. So
I think
what
we
I'm
need
going
a
to say to you
little
is if
we
we
need a little
don't, are you okay with
clarification
going
on
forward
that.
with that?
Bill, I think we need a little clarification on that. Your comment would be just to be able to support the height.
Yes.
And support the area.
Yes.
Which is actually section 2 and 3 of this list rather than
Number one.
Sorry, yeah.
number 1.
Right, number 2 and 3. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I reversed it.
Pat and then Sandra, I guess?
If we do as Member Kane has suggested, I remembered, then say that we're supportive of the first two,
No.
the two that don't involve the accessory building itself, or don't involve the location of this accessory building, let me get it right, then would the conditions about the drip line, et cetera, have to be there?
No.
So then, rather than even have the option to defer, if we just do the two, I understand that, thank you. I just needed clarification.
Sandra, I believe you were going to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The zoning bylaw requires a 10-foot setback. The applicant is requiring a 4-foot setback. Committee has the option of splitting the difference. It's a lesser variance. Just putting it out there. There would be a lesser variance, it wouldn't require additional circulation. Drip line may or may not be required. Depends, well, I think we still go back to conservation. They did say, to the extent possible, or feasible to the extent possible. They understand that trees are what they are and aren't going to be static, they're going to be dynamic.
6 feet.
And keep growing, so drip line will be
6
moving
feet.
as time goes on.
That's right.
Thank you.
But it was just a comment.
I believe it would be appropriate if we were to turn to the applicant and you've heard the comments, you've heard some suggestions. I can't openly say what would you like us to do, but I can openly say to you, what would you like to comment on at this point in time?
I appreciate that everybody's heard what I had to say. You guys have looked at my application. I think it's, plenty fair. I was kind of unaware of the drip line, and now that kind of heard a little bit more about it, if you guys would be willing to meet me in the middle, I think that's something that I'd be more than happy to accept. I think you guys have been very fair with your reasoning, and I'm that much more educated going from here on out, so I'll consider that if I ever have to build something else.
So when you say meet us in the middle, that means in relationship to the setback, or does meet in the middle mean that there's some thought that we'll approve the height and the size and go back to 10 feet on the side yard? There's two ways of interpreting
I
that.
apologize, I'll clarify. I'd just like to clarify the height. The height references the midpoint.
Of the roof,
Okay.
yes.
Yes, the council would be willing to accept a 6-foot side setback.
It's only 2 feet.
Okay, we've heard your comment, thank you. Any other questions from the committee here?
I have a question about my last comment. The difference between the 4 feet and 10 feet is one tree. Is it? It's the length of the table. It's one tree that we're talking about. So from my viewpoint, I would support a motion that extended the height and extended the size of the building to the request made by the applicant and return this side setback to the way the bylaws are set up. There's lots of property room there.
Is that a motion, Bill?
I'll make that in the form of a motion, yes.
Seconded by Mark. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Passed. Thank you.
Reasons?
Concerns of the height, we've allowed it before, so we have had set precedents. Condition to the size of the building, considering the lot size, there's lots of room for a building of that size. There's no objections. As a matter of fact, there was support by neighbors. And you don't need a reason for, you need a reason for one we did not pass as well. There's sufficient property that a side setback of 10 feet is very reasonable.
Also to preserve the trees
Yeah.
when we can within the British Marine.
And Sandra, we're looking at your modified conditions in respect to the sea container. Thank you.
And I
And the
don't think you
removal
need-
of condition 4, right? Sorry. And the removal of condition 4?
Pat,
Yeah.
question is recognized.
I was going to bring up the same question. Do we need to bother with a drip line at this point?
No.
Just leave that right there completely, forget about it. Because if he's going to move the house, if he's going to move the accessory building into compliance with our side setback, then the drip line stuff is just complications that aren't required. Sorry?
They're ash trees, they're gonna go in.
Anything further needed, Sandra?
Not for me.
We did get a support majority on that.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with it.
Take care, thank you.
Any other new business, Sandra?
I have none, thank you.
I'm not just sure what other business would be at this point in time. A motion for adjournment. Pat? Seconder? Mark? All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you. Committee of Adjustment does not